I think it's also challenging the status quo. A lot of people get really messed up when their reality is being questioned, and that's kind of a big part of what I feel like I've been brought here to do, is shake things up in that respect, because it's kind of necessary for people to hear the hard things. And being a Scorpio in my nature, I'm all about going into the darkness, and I'm no angel. Like, I've had to do a lot of shit clearing, and that's part of why I feel like I'm capable of holding space for that arena, because I'm not perfect, and it's not about judging. It's about how do we get from A to B, and it doesn't matter where we've come from, it matters what we become.
Welcome to Trujectory, the podcast committed to helping you align with who you really are, your true self. The one who is so comfortable with their uniqueness, so in love with life, and so effortlessly able to manifest everything they always dreamt of. I want this podcast to be a resource to help you jump into the driver's seat rather than continuing as a passenger in your own story. Let's understand why we choose to hold ourselves back, so we can shed the lies that we've programmed into our minds. We can heal the root causes and step into the epic human that we know we can be. If you're ready to start aligning with your trajectory, let's do it. We have Kass SCARDINO in the studio today. I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you for being here, Kass. Kass is among many other things, she is a crystal, spiritual science and energy teacher. She's a mum, and she's someone who has been quite an influence for me in the spiritual community. I had quite a late awakening, and you were someone that sort of I gravitated towards and started to learn a lot from, whether you knew it or not. You're just dropping so many wisdom bombs all of the time, and it's like, okay, let me get some of this girl's insight. So thank you so much for being here, Kass. How you doing?
I'm well, thank you so much for having me, and I love hearing when people come up to me, because it's kind of one of those things when you post stuff, you don't realize who's checking you out. You just kind of go, okay, I need to send this out. And I love hearing when people are like, that thing that you posted really resonated, because it makes me feel like I'm doing what I'm here to be doing. So thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it.
No, absolutely. No, I think you seem like someone who has just such a deep understanding of our spiritual nature and what's happening in the world at the moment, and the phase that we're in terms of humanity and this civilization at this time. And I think that just bleeds out of you. Like, whenever you share content, it's just got so many different nuggets of gold, and it's really interesting. So I'm still a baby, I'm still learning so many things, but I would love, let's just start with a massive question, right? Let's just dive in deep. I would love to get your take. If you could give us a bit of a breakdown of what ascension is. What, like, this word that sort of gets thrown around a lot, it almost sort of becomes a trending word at some points. But ascension, the Great Awakening, are they the same thing? Or what is this point that we're in humanity, and why is it so important at this time? What's going on?
That's a really good question, because it is a very broad, depending on how far down the rabbit hole, I guess, people have gone. And I think for someone like myself, who's worked with a really broad spectrum of teachers, as well as done a lot of investigating myself, and I guess from where I'll start from, which is like probably the stage one of ascension. Ascension is a crystallization of our soul that is happening from a spiritual, etheric perspective. And what that looks like is that for people that are going through ascension symptoms, the world is changing, and you can tell the world is changing. You can see from just what's happened from 5 years ago, we're not in the same kind of life that we had back then. And before then, it kind of was changing, but the way that it's changed from the last 5 years, you can really see the difference in how people are starting to become more self-aware. They're also starting to understand that we have to be responsible for what it is that we're outputting. And there's also a real awakening happening around what's right and what's not serving us in the grand scheme of, the collective and the world, because Mother Earth is a living being. As much as some people haven't quite understood that from a conscious level. We understand that the earth is alive because we live on it and it feeds us, it gives us everything we need, but it also has a consciousness, and that consciousness is what a lot of the people that have come here for their ascension process to help Mother Earth are going through a really big awakening, where they understand that there's something bigger to this world than just, you know, death and taxes. And I feel like that's kind of like a really first stage of ascension, in a way, of understanding that we're changing, the world's changing, the earth is changing, and we're starting to realize from a deeper level that if we don't change, then a lot of the things that hurt us, and I mean in an emotional space, things like patterns, like relationships, or the way that we treat ourselves, or the way that we've been brought up, those things start to really become a lot more intense, and they start to show us the things that we don't like, because it's really about healing not just ourselves, but what we're healing is now timelines. And when I talk about timelines, I'm talking about the ancestral lineages that we come from. And so a lot of us are doing that ancestral healing at this time, and that's because the vibration that we hold at this point in time is so much more powerful than, say, if we were born in the 1800s. Like, I just want to bring this into context. If we were to go back in time to the 1800s, our vibration is so much higher that we would actually look like this bright being. And so if we would look like this bright being, and you think of the context of what people consider an angel to be, you always hear that you think, and when you see angels, you see this bright light, or there's this higher vibration of energy. And so what's really beautiful when my students understand is that when we're doing the work, sometimes what's happening is we're changing timelines from our ancestral lineages, so that when these people that have seen angels, what they might actually be seeing is ancestors that are coming back and helping to heal them and shift the reality of the consciousness of time. And so if you understand the word angel and then angle, so if you think about an angle as like a dimension of time and space changing, so we're going into a different angle and changing something that's happening in that dimension or that time and space. And that's kind of what's actually happening to the people that are ascending and doing this work. We're shifting large momentous levels of reality and changing the trajectory of time.
Wow. Let me lay down for a second. Oh my gosh, it's incredible, and that is such a fantastic way to put it. I mean, when I first woke up, which wasn't that long ago, it was about 5 years ago now, I, obviously, as everyone does, I dove headfirst into as much information as I could find. And it was a bit tough because people did have all of these different understandings and ways of explaining ascension and what was happening. But I love the way you were talking about crystallizing, because it is a physical thing that's actually happening. And it's got to do with the sun, right? Does it have something to do with the actual sun affecting, like there's more light that's shining in on the planet at this time, and that's sort of affecting our biology in some way? Does that play in?
It's a bit more than just the sun. It's kind of a... yes, the sun and the solar flares and all of the speeding up of the Earth's hurts, because there's a speeding up that's happening. I don't know if you feel it, like years just go so much faster than they used to. Yeah, it's kind of like the week's just gone, a day goes in a second, but there's this speeding up that's happening, and that speeding up is that thing that I was saying, that we're vibrating at a higher frequency, and the people that don't get that, they feel stuck, or they feel dense, or they feel that energy being heavy. The sun as a vibration is bringing in the light, and that helps us to crystallize aspects of light. Absolutely. And I couldn't really explain that to you because my background in all of that isn't really like adequate for that. But all I can say is the crystallization that's happening is happening from a level of the etheric realms. So we have the physical, emotional, mental, and etheric. And so the etheric realms that were once a lot more heavier because the planet's vibration was slower, we weren't having the same access to it. So if you think of channeling is like you're turning the dial to move into a higher frequency. But what's happening is that the earth is changing its dial. It's tapping into a higher frequency. And so people that are really living in these higher dimensions will already feel that they have that ability to live in the fifth dimension and higher. And it will feel like, you know, aspects of joy and elation and, you know, tapping into their higher heart, which is like just a really, you know, feeling of knowing and awareness of what that means to be living in their purpose. And everything flows from that. Their friendships, their work life, their home life will have that definite frequency in its aspects. But then if you're not shifting into those higher states, you'll find yourself in those relationships where they're testing you, or you'll find yourself you know, having to work through challenges that might feel like aspects of our patterns in terms of self-worth or boundaries, or, you know, dealing with things that really test us on what it is that we're going to accept or what we're going to say enough is enough. And so that crystallization is really just allowing us to live in that higher heart, that higher vibration, so that we can be those really yummy feelings all the time, basically, or as much as possible.
That's beautiful. And I mean, that that's something that confused me when I was starting off this journey myself, was the topic of 5D. You know, some people talk about it as an actual place, as a this, as a, you know, it's spoken about as heaven on earth, all of these sorts of things. But when you actually break it down, it's just like you said. It's, I mean, from my perspective anyway, it seems like it is a state where you are living the life that you dream of. It's the state where you're not in resistance and you're not fighting with your ego every 5 minutes, and you're allowing yourself to be who you truly are. And when you just drop those distortions and all of the messages that have told you that you can't do what you want to do, suddenly you start to, all of these opportunities start to flood towards you because you're raising your vibration. But I'd love to know if you have some advice for people who are just starting out on their awakening journey, or maybe haven't even begun yet but are really interested in, obviously everyone wants to be in 5D, right? What are some things that people can do on a daily basis to raise their vibration? Maybe give us some of your spiritual practices that you do on a daily, if you have some.
Yeah, I'm all about spiritual hacks. Like for me as a mom, I'm like constantly like, okay, shift your reality, because I am tested.
Yes.
Children, I think, are the biggest test when we're dealing with high emotions and lack of sleep, and, you know, not having the time that we used to eat well, exercise, all of those things. And so somebody that I really understand, you know, has to do more work is that, you know, as parents, we are the gatekeepers to humanity, and we're basically the first point of contact for every single person in this planet. You know, we're the teachers. And so I'm constantly like working out ways to help parents to achieve, you know, a sense of at least harmony within themselves. And so the way that I look at it is that we are our environment, we are our emotions, and we are the things that we put in us. So if you can kind of take those aspects and just kind of look at what it is that we're doing in those areas. If our home, and, you know, the thing is with our home, we don't have to always have it tidy or clean. It's not about that. It's more about, you know, having fresh air in our home. It's about cleaning it. So I use salt bowls, and salt bowls are just literally a plastic container with a handful of salt, put some water in it. And if you're going through really tricky times, so things that are really dense could be hard times at work, relationship breakdowns, you hold that energy in your home, and your home is basically a breeding ground of everything that you're going through. And if you're going through hard times, you don't want that energy to be floating around you. So salt bowls are pretty much the easiest go-to. You put a salt bowl in every room that you spend a lot of time in, and if you are going through a hard time, change it every 2 or 3 days. If you're not going through a bad time, change it every week or every month if it's not like necessary. But I would say that's a really first, touch base. And you can also do salt baths.
Is that just okay? And is that just regular sort of table salt, or is that Himalayan
table
salt, or
salt, just
salt,
like
or any?
No, just table salt. So I would use table salt for the stuff around the house. And that's just like really cheap stuff. Get a big bag because you want to keep changing it. And with that Tupperware container, you don't ever eat through it because that's going to absorb all the dense energy. So when you're getting rid of the salt water, always bless it, send it unconditional love from your heart, and thank the earth for absorbing it down the sink or the toilet. And then, if you're doing salt baths for yourself, you might want to use the Himalayan salts because there's minerals in them, but you can use table salt, it's fine. And what the table salt does is it extracts, it actually pulls out the density in our body. And because we're dealing with so many levels of things that are happening to us unconsciously, it's really important that now more than ever we're clearing ourselves. So clearing our home, clearing our body, and then what we consume is really important, like what we're watching on TV. Yes, I get it. People want to be in touch with what's going on in the world, but really balance that with positivity. If you are watching stuff that's really, bringing your psyche into something that can affect you even unconsciously. And so be mindful of even, music that you play. If you want to lift the vibration in your house, play medicine music from Native Americans, play it from, any country that has the traditional custodians of the land, because the energy that those songs hold has been brought forward through thousands of years. And the land has heard those songs. And so the land actually understands the language of these songs because it actually has a connection to it. And so when we play these medicine songs, or even like clapsticks, the indigenous would use clapsticks because the previous indigenous cultures before them used clapsticks. And so whenever they use clapsticks, they're using it as an acknowledgement to the land and the elders that walked before them to say, I respect you and I am acknowledging you. And in that acknowledgement, the earth can resonate with us and say, yes, I'm here to support you too. You're not alone. And that's kind of what we need to start realizing, is that there is a symbiosis happening, but we don't actually realize it because we haven't taken the time to stop and actually connect like we used to when we were back in the traditional times. So yeah, playing music, salt bowls, watching what you consume. Obviously organic is a real must, but if you can't afford organic, bless your food. Bless it with love, because the frequency of love is the highest vibration. Nothing can trump love. It is highest than everything else. And so what the density wants us to believe is that we don't have our shit together, and that when we're going through hard times, it wants us to believe that we're never going to get out of it. And so that's the only thing that it has over us, is that it plays these mind games. It plays these emotional, whirlwinds, because it can't actually trump love. And when we touch love, it goes, oh, game's over. And so we have to just kind of go, oh, right, I know what I can do. Salt bowls, playing, medicine music, start blessing everything with love. And it's like all of a sudden, just in that moment, you've literally taken the wheels and gone, no, I'm actually in control here.
That's beautiful. And it's from what I'm seeing, it's a time when all of the things that were shown in movies and media and, all of the things that we would consume when we were younger that was sold as fiction are coming to the forefront. They are becoming truth. So, for example, imagination is, been scoffed at and joked at in the past. Your imagination is the most powerful tool you have, and this is where manifestation comes from. And everything that's ever been created has come from imagination. But there's still this idea that, oh, that's silly, that's just a childish thing, using your imagination. And it's sort of this time where we need to tap more into what kids are doing before they get programmed. And, like you're doing, being a conscious parent, making sure they don't fall into those sorts of programs, and being able to express even fuller those, imaginary friends they have, those ideas, that energy, because it all does come back to vibration. I know there would be some people listening going, blessing your food, what the heck is that? But it's so true. It's all vibration, because we're all energy. That's the thing that we haven't been taught. We're starting to now, and there are so many more people waking up. And because of the internet the way it is now and how connected we all are, this awakening is happening so fast, and there are so many more people speaking about these topics. But it does get a little bit diluted because there's so many different versions of things. But I just think, I think it's really interesting. It's a really interesting time, because all of the things that I was taught when I was younger, and then I believed up until my 30s, early 30s, is now like I'm flipping all of it, and I really have to consciously flip it. And like you said, sort of take a pause and go, okay, no, I'm going to take the wheel back here, because I definitely, like you said, have fallen into that trap of I'm feeling crap now, so I'm always going to feel like crap. So what's the point? And you sort of get into this really low, dense mood. And just from starting to incorporate a few of these beautiful practices into my life, I mean, I've been able to stack habits on top of habits to the point where most of my life now is a spiritual practice. And I am so in control of my vibration that it blows my mind. And when I'm not now, I'm so aware of it, and I can see the difference. I see the difference in interactions that I have, the difference in opportunities that come to me when I'm raising my vibration versus when I'm not. And so it's just really, it's just fascinating. It just blows my mind all the time, because I never thought I'd be talking about these sorts of things a few years ago, right? And it's like, that's the main topic that I want to talk about with everyone, because this is where we all can take our power back and find our purpose. But I love that you have known, like you seem to have known your purpose for a very long time. Like when did you start teaching? How long have you been teaching for?
Pretty much as soon as I started learning pranic healing, which was over 10 years ago. I just started like in the backyard, inviting like friends to just kind of like do little mini sessions. I was just obsessed, and I've always been obsessed. I'm a spiritual geek, pretty much. Yeah.
Well, what do you think? Because I think you're a fantastic teacher. You have an air about you, and I remember watching one of your crystal. I wasn't able to be there in person because it was during COVID. I think it was just before COVID hit, but you recorded it and then you were able to share the recording. I watched the recording version of it, and there was just so much information. Like I think it was about a 1 hour course, and I only got half an hour through, and I had 5 pages, full A4 pages of notes, like scribbling out drawings and illustrations. It was about crystals, because I think crystals are such a misunderstood topic. Hello, Ralph's just joined the conversation in the background.
Hello, Ralph.
So first of all, I want to know, what do you think makes a great teacher, if you've put thought into it, or if it's just something that's naturally come to you? And then I want to talk about crystals a little bit, because I think they're very misunderstood as well. So what do you think makes a good teacher, or a great teacher?
So teaching is really it's a Shakti pack. A Shakti pack is basically a transferal of energy. And with a good teacher, that transference is what's happening from a higher vibration. And I feel like, when people say, when the student is ready, the teacher will show themselves. It's kind of one of those things where I think people resonate with the teacher that they need at that time. And that can be any level, to be honest. And I think that's what's so beautiful now about people really taking that leap forward to start becoming coaches and teachers. There's like a teacher for everything. And I think that's really good, because my level of work might not resonate with somebody that's really just like overwhelmed with like how much comes out of 1 hour of what I'm teaching. But I feel like what makes a good teacher is somebody that walks their talk.
Oh yes. Sorry, Ralph's trying to eat the plants behind me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, these are so yummy.
And they're plastic. Stop it. likes the thought of it. I've had to get rid of all the real plants in here, and he still thinks that this is the real deal. Anyway, but someone who walks the talk, absolutely, that is such a huge thing for me.
Yeah, and I think the way that I can say that in a context that can really bring insight is that if somebody is a teacher of spiritual enlightenment and then you hear them gossiping, then you've got to really think, is that person really in alignment with a higher ground? Because anyone that has something to say that's coming from judgment is really something that's coming from a place of their own self-worth. And so if they can't really walk their talk, that's kind of something I really find as a first base, as like, okay, maybe that's not really where they're coming from, because a lot of people can make things look what they need to, but there's like that missing thing behind the scenes. So I find it's really important to also like do a little bit of research, and that can be like contacting some people that maybe have taught them and kind of finding out firsthand what their experiences have been like. But even saying that, like I've experienced people that have been really triggered by me being a teacher, and it's not even students, it's people that are maybe in the outskirts of my life, and they find me and the, you know, maybe the light that I bring as an example really triggering for them. And I think that can really cause a lot for them internally to feel like, oh, well, you know, why is this person on a pedestal, or why do they have something that I don't have? And so even when you're asking somebody how they feel about them, maybe feeling into what's going on in their life, because that can also be a judgment around what's happening for them to create that experience for that's showing up for them. Just as an example, because I know for a fact that, you know, there has been instances where it's super funny. Like people think because I've got groups of people that I'm teaching that I've got a cult. And I'm just like, how do you get me being a cult leader? Yeah, like this is actually really, really interesting.
What?
But I think I think it just is like, it's like a...
It's a lack of understanding, right? I mean, it's probably also to do with the topics that you're teaching, because they are so esoteric and they're so important. And when people tap onto them, it's a game changer. It's like, oh my gosh. And they don't need to be persuaded anymore, because as soon as they start to put these practices that you're teaching into their life, they see the difference and they don't need to go backwards, and they don't ever want to. But it's the ones that aren't willing to step outside of that constant reinforcement of, we only have our five senses, what I see and what I touch that's all that exists. And that's why I'm loving what's coming out right now with so many different teachers. Like you said, it's, you know, it can look a bit overwhelming sometimes, even from my own perspective. I'm only just starting into my teaching career myself. There's so many things that I want to teach that I've learned from my own experience, and things that I'll still continue to learn forever and try and share that knowledge. But there are moments where I go, oh my gosh, there are so many teachers. Like, what's the need for me? There's no need here. But it really is a matter of you, if you feel like you have this thing to say, that means there is an audience waiting for you. There are people that will resonate with you. We could be saying very similar messages, you and I, but there will be people, like you said, that resonate more with you, and then that resonate more with me. It might be because you're a mum and I'm not. That might be the difference that they needed for some reason. But I think it's just, it's definitely, and I mean, you know, as we all do, I saw this hilarious meme the other day, and there's so many of them coming out now about spiritual awakenings, and this one was about this, I can't remember what movie it was from, some sort of like really cheesy comedy movie, and it was a guy that was basically tumbling down a mountain face, and it was like what your spiritual awakening looks like. 2 seconds later he's screaming and he's rolling, and it goes loss of reality, loss of friends, loss of family, questioning your sanity, and then you think you're okay, and then you think you figured it all out, ha ha ha, and then he starts falling more and more and more. And it's just, it is literally part of the process that you are going to find that people that were in your world, they don't resonate with you anymore. And when you look at it from a higher perspective, that is genuinely a resonance, vibratory relationship. It's like you have started to raise your frequency and they don't want to, and that's okay. And I think something that a lot of us fall into as well is when we first wake up, we want to tell everyone everything. Here's what I've learned, and here's the truth. truth about this and that, and that freaks people out. It's
Yeah.
like, what the hell? But
100%.
so I mean, yeah, it doesn't surprise me that you would have people saying the cult thing is a bit interesting. I guess that's just the topics, because what you're talking about is so, like, you've got so much science behind your topics as well that it sort of goes over a lot of people's heads probably. But the fact that you've got the science there, I love that, because that's the more tangible, more grounded, okay, look at this is measurable, and this is what happens when we do these sorts of things.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think I challenged the status
onto...
quo. Sorry, I was going to say, I think it's also challenging the status quo. A lot of people get really, messed up when their reality is being questioned. And that's kind of a big part of what I feel like I've been brought here to do, is shake things up in that respect, because it's kind of necessary for people to hear the hard things. And, being a Scorpio in my nature, I'm all about going into the darkness, and I'm no angel. Like, I've had to do a lot of shit clearing, and that's part of why I feel like I'm capable of holding space for that arena, because I'm not perfect, and it's not about judging. It's about, how do we get from A to B? And it doesn't matter where we've come from, it matters what we become. And so from that context, I'm always kind of like pulling out the things that people have to look at. And that's kind of the hard part of this, I guess. It's not hard, it's just like, it can really, affect people and ruffle feathers, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds like you're doing exactly what you're meant to be doing, which is awesome. But the
Yeah.
fact that you're aware of it as well is so fantastic. It means, it might sting here and there every now and then when you sort of tap back into that personality self, but when you sort of, realize from your higher perspective, the higher vantage point, it's like, I'm doing exactly what I'm doing. I'm affecting people in exactly the way that I'm meant to. And it might not look pretty, but, sometimes, most of the times, the least pretty moments in our lives are the ones that change us the most and that we're so grateful for in the end. So you'll probably, I wouldn't be surprised if a decade from now you have this big flurry of people coming and going, thank you, Kass, like the ones that were judging at this point in time going, I get it now, like you freaking helped me so much.
Yeah, I honestly, I feel like I'm very human. Like, I don't think of myself as a teacher in the way that people see other teachers on a pedestal. And I think that's what I respect about my teachers as well. When I really think about all of the really amazing teachers I've had, they've just been superhuman. And the fact that we are human beings having a human existence, we still have to pay bills, we still get triggered, we still deal with like 3D stuff, but it's like the way that we deal with it is different, and that's the difference, I guess. And going back into the tools, like, that's where it comes down to. If we have tools in our toolbox, you're going to be a different human being. And that's kind of what, as a teacher, I'm here to do, is just give people different little ways that they can shift their reality, including the one around, the biggest one I found people needed was that we're dealing with a lot of infiltration. So infiltration is basically when we're dealing with things that seem like they're testing us, and we're doing all of the really good things to kind of like stay in our good vibration, and then all of a sudden we have things that sideswipe us. That's when I say you're dealing with infiltration, because we are dealing with a spiritual war, and people kind of go, what does it mean to be in a spiritual war? And I explain to them, when we're going through such high levels of light, there is also really dark levels of dark happening in the polarity. And that darkness doesn't want the light to succeed. And because we're at the precipice of the biggest shift in the existence of time, like, I think that's what people don't understand, is that there hasn't been a planet that shifts into a whole nother dimension ever. And so when you think about a whole planet shifting and you go, how is that even possible? Well, I want to ask you, we never thought that it would be possible for there to be a splitting of the earth. But when we went through a time back, not so long ago, when there was us against them, the people that were all about their sovereignty and their choices around, I should have the right to choose what is allowed in my body, you could see a very clear shift in the reality of the people that were on one side and the people that were on the other side. And both of them were living in completely different worlds. And so you can start to realize how this shifting in two different worlds happening, where one will be coexisting at the same time, but will be completely on a complete level of, another level down to the ones that are another level up, if that makes sense. And so when we're dealing with infiltration is basically, there are very amazing superhumans like yourself that are here to do the work to create ripples of change. And those ripples of change are so momentous, I should say, that the darkness will throw anything that they can to create a block. And those blockages can look like really big speeding fines, or they can look like somebody backstabbing you that you thought that you loved and they loved you, or it can look like for example a dog.
Self-doubt and stuff?
Self-doubt. Absolutely. But I'm talking about even like crazier things. Like I know one woman that had infiltration in the form of a dog attacking her cat, and the cat was like her child, and she thought her child was going to die, and it was like, how could this happen? And it was literally this infiltration knew that the only way that they could create density in that person's life was to attack something around her that would create that feeling of like density and stop her from doing what she was meant to do. And so these are all the different types of levels of infiltration that people have no idea is happening at the moment. And that's kind of what we're dealing with when I talk about a spiritual war happening. There is like 100% this clashing that's going on and wanting to stop as many people from achieving their highest potential at this time.
Yeah, so when the shit starts to hit the fan, know that you're on the right path and keep going forward. Keep doing it.
Or just kind of go, this is infiltration. What am I going to give my power to? Because like it can look like, a really horrible circumstance, and you're like consumed by it. You can't stop thinking about it. It becomes everything that you put your energy into, and then it's about you stopping and going, this is just infiltration. Like, what am I giving my energy to? I have to stop right now, send it love, and choose to create the new path, keep shifting.
So that is beautiful advice right there, because I was going to ask you if you have any tips around that. So when you do find yourself in those moments where it's like, oh my God, everything's getting a little bit heavy, the key is to, as I'm hearing it, is to step back, take a bit of a pause, get back to that higher vantage point, and really come from a place of love, sending it love. Like I was listening to some Bob Proctor stuff the other day, the manifesting legend, and he was talking about something that he did every night was, on top of writing his gratitude, 10 things he's grateful for every day, and whenever he was low, that's what he would do. He would also send love to 3 people that are really, bothering him, that are giving him a hard time, or that are sort of, distorting his field in whatever way. And at first I heard that, I was like, okay, I like the idea behind it, but why really? And he was saying, it's, again, it comes down to vibration. We want to be in a love vibration because that's what we attract. So if we are sending people love, it's for us as well. It's not just for them. It's mainly for us. It's for us to retain and maintain that vibration that is of a higher frequency that will then allow you to call in all of the things that you are desiring. But when you're at a low vibration, you call in, horrible experiences sometimes. And if you continue to believe that that's all that will ever be, then you call in more bad experiences. Then you get the proof of your own idea that that's all that exists. And then you're in this loop of just manifesting horrible experiences. And I mean, I've been on both sides of that, so I can see the power in that now. But I love that. So taking a step back, sending it love, and being aware that it's infiltration, it's not you.
Yeah.
Sorry,
the infiltration part.
Cat is flying around.
and like, infiltration for me can even be like technology, like, distorting on me all the time. Whenever I have a huge launch where I'm giving free information, I will get so many glitches in my technology, because that people don't realize it's even down to our technology. Like, our technology can also be infiltrated. And if you think about it, whenever you're dealing with forces of nature in our home, like infiltrating us, if you're dealing with entities, they turn on your TV, or they screw up your electricals. So what's to say they can't screw up your computers and your Zoom meetings and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. And they know how much stress that causes, so that's a great path for them to follow. Oh gosh, there's so many different topics I want to talk about with you, but something I do want to touch onto crystals, but let's get back there in a little bit, because I think more importantly, I would love to touch onto your ideas of community living and community land. What is this about, and where do you see us going in the future? Because this is something I'm really passionate about as well. I don't have an experience of it. I don't know what exactly I want to do. I mean, I know what I want to do in my mind. I have no idea how it's going to happen. I'm going to just leave that up to the universe. But I'm noticing so many other people are having very similar ideas. So I want to know what your sort of vibe is and what you're planning and what you see for the future for community land.
Yeah, look, that's kind of like my big end game, I guess, in terms of all of the work I've probably been doing behind the scenes, like the stuff that people don't realize that I'm working on, not getting paid for, as well as all the stuff that I'm working on with community land. And it kind of started when The Inconvenient Truth came out. So I probably was only just like a teenager when that came out with Al Gore, and the realization around global warming and just the effects that it had on the planet really hit hard, that I was going to grow up in a day and age where I was going to see what these effects were going to look like. And it kind of is one of those things now, even when I think about my children, what are they going to have to deal with growing up? And so I remember watching a movie called Garbage Warriors, and they were these people living in New Mexico creating homes completely out of trash. And so that kind of started making me go, well, if we can make homes out of trash, what else could we do if we were like really thinking outside of the box? And then it kind of swung me into really looking at alternative homes. And then that kind of brought me into thinking about like, what are we doing to actually reverse the effects of what we're doing to the planet as well. And that kind of goes into the damage that we're doing to create global warming. And that kind of in itself is such a huge undertaking. But I remember when I first heard a lecture from Robert Gilbert about a gentleman who was working with the grandparent trees, and he explained that all of the grandparent trees are the ones that take care of the little trees that are around them. And what he developed was this concoction of silica, volcanic ash, and vine leaves that were compressed together and creating a toroidal field around these grandparent trees. And then he would pray to the grandparent trees to send messages to the little seedlings to help them grow. And that really sparked my interest around how can we use spiritual science to actually reverse the damages that we've created on, the planet. And so it kind of got me into biogeometry, and biogeometry is a science and it is also a spiritual practice. And the only way I can explain it is it's the language of the planet. So if you think of sacred geometry as shape formations, and everything's connected to shape, or the shape information that creates our existence. And for an example, if you think about our homes, they're squares, and a square is a foundation shape, so it has a solid grounding energy. And that's why I always say to everyone, you have to clear the energy in your home, because it holds the vibration of what's happening to you because of that shape information of the square. All of the right angles in the room will intensify anything that's happening to us because of that shape information. That's just an example of how shape exists in our environment. But on a deeper level, the information from biogeometry really gets us to understand not just the mechanics of what we're feeling, sensing, and perceiving through the information of the language of the earth, but it also allows us to test it. And that's a big game changer, because a lot of the times when we're doing spiritual practices, we're like, I feel good, but why am I feeling good? how has this energy affected us in a way that's shifted who and what we're like, basically. And so what biogeometry can do is it can test the frequency of the energy so that it can tell you what it's connected to, and it can tell you how it's shifted you on your chakra system, on your organs, whatever it is that you're working with. And because of that ability to test, it now brings a quality that we can now go, oh, this is the quality of this spiritual energy. And what they found was there was a quality in the vibration of creation. So the quality of creation is oneness, okay? The oneness is pure creation. It is basically connection to unity. It's connected to God. If you want to believe in a vibration that's God, creation is God. Yeah, like you can't say one without the other, right? And so during this testing, they had the ability to test the quality of creation. And what they found was that all of the spiritual meccas around the world held this frequency of creation. And so what it gave them was the recognition that if they could create this frequency of creation, then they could start changing the density, because they could create this vibration to manipulate what was creating the density in the earth and reverse what had happened to that place. And so it's just been an absolute game changer, because you can connect crystals, you can connect colors, you connect angles, and all of them have the potential to create this resonance of creation energy. And what my next phase is really getting people to understand that if we implement this creation vibration into our food, into safe places where people that are dealing with really hard density in the city or their life can come to, then they get a place where they can shift rapidly, or a place where they're safe to develop themselves. And then that can also be something that we can produce food or medicine to give to people that can't come to these places. And so that's basically the crux of what is in the workings at the moment. It's like creating these places that are energetically aligned to this frequency, and then teaching other people how to use it to create superfood, but like real, genuine, like next level superfood.
Wow, okay. So is this something that you would need a biogeometry practitioner, or what do you call yourself, a practitioner or a...
I haven't had the full qualification, but I've studied it. I've studied biogeometry. And to become a practitioner, it's like a whole nother level, but you just study the course to understand how to use the tools. But I, can also teach people what kind of combinations and crystals work to create biogeometry frequencies for them to use in their home. Or I've got even like free things that I give that people can use to put inside of their fridge underneath their food to help their food vibrate at this higher resonance. And all of those things really help. It's just like just taking those little steps makes a big difference in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, and that's the thing, if you understand that we're all vibration, then of course we would all want to be resonating at this vibration that you're talking about, creation. Is this something that, like you're saying, is this something that you teach, or is this something that you can give people a couple of tips on how they should do that at home? Is it something consciously? Is it, what is it? Is it a physical act? How do we get that vibration?
There's like,
and if it's something that you teach, obviously, don't tell us.
Yeah. So there's a few ways. Like I've got 2 courses. The one's free and it's called I Am the Power. And that is really just like all of the things that I would tell myself if I was like going back in time and connecting to my, young, naive self and going, if you want all of the hacks, then watch this and implement them, because it's like I've got the aspects around the food, I've got all the aspects around the blessing, and I show you with the tools how to implement that. And so that's a freebie that anyone can go to. But the one with the crystals, there's a special crystal called an celestial, and the celestial crystal is like a motherboard of crystals. And when I say it's a motherboard, it's like it connects into time and space and all areas of dimension and reality, and it helps us to connect into those aspects of ourselves when we're needing to shift our reality. But the smoky quartz, then smoky celestial is quite a common crystal that you can find on the market. But the smoky celestial, because of the smoky quartz being a crystal that already energetically absorbs density, when you combine the smoky with the celestial, what it does is it helps to create a cleaning agent, kind of like a vacuum, that will pull out anything that is in us through all time and space dimension, anything that resonates from past, present, future, parallel existences of our spiritual soul shards. And so that's kind of the complexity of what people don't realize, is that we're a spiritual being having a human existence, but our spiritual being is connected through all time and space. And so what could be happening with one of our dark aspects of ourself could be actually happening in an underworld aspect of ourself, or it could be happening from a past life aspect of ourself, or it could be happening from a childhood trauma aspect of ourself. And because we're not capable yet of all having access to clearing on those levels, just, because if you're somebody that's like, how do I even access that? What you can do is you can use a smoky celestial, and wherever you sense that trauma, because we can feel density when we're like dealing with a broken heart, it feels like pain in our heart, right? And so if you're going through a trauma state, there is a sensation that comes up with that trauma state, and that sensation is connected to the cellular memory that's in our being, and that cellular memory is what needs to be dealt with or what needs healing. And so the smoky celestial, when you consciously use it with that trauma state to say, this is what I actually want to clear, and then you work with the frequency of creation, and creation is a unity consciousness. And so dealing with unity consciousness is actually going into the vibration of the oneness. So if you think of the oneness as a direction, right? If you were going two is like this, right? So the vibration of two as a direction is like that. It's going like in two separate directions.
Opposite,
but the oneness, the oneness is like directly in, yeah? So if you want to go into the creation vibration and clear something that's happening on your cellular level in your being, using the smoky celestial and then going into that area that's causing the pain in your frequency is actually connecting the creation vibration, using the smoky celestial as the key, and then clearing it through all time and space in your frequency.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I love that. There's a free option if you follow Kass's work, and then you can also go a lot deeper with her. Obviously, as you can see, she's blowing my mind again. I'm like I'm gonna need a nap after this. It's amazing, but it's all fantastic. So I guess we're going to have to wrap up soon. I know you've got a busy day as well. But I would like to just touch on a little bit of crystals, because I think there's something that's just so misunderstood. And they're also, again, coming back to how media has portrayed spiritual people. I mean, we know back in the... it's been such a short period of time that we've had all of the things that we have now, right? But yet we think that it's always been this way. Whereas in the 1800s, I believe it was witches who were mainly in charge of medicine and healing people and all sorts of things, which is why the witch trials came out, when all these pharmaceutical meds came into the picture and all those sorts of things. But I think crystals have still remained. I still see, when I do occasionally watch TV, I see, jokes about someone who's spiritual that come on with all these flowy clothes and this and that, and everything's love and light, and they've always got crystals, and they're always taking the piss out of crystals and spiritual people. You know what I mean? Not always, but in some cases. And I mean, we have crystals in our brain. We have crystals that we use for technology constantly. They're energy conduits, right? So What is, I guess, in your perspective, because you've been working with them so deeply for so long, what's a couple of the biggest misconceptions about crystals, or what people should know that they don't?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have magnetite in our brain, and magnetite works like an antenna for us to pick up receptors of, like, cognition. And so what they actually did studies on with this ability to pick up the cognition of what's happening on with our brain and how we perceive things, is that the magnetite is kind of like a honing device. Bees use it, dolphins use it for them to be able to navigate. And we use it in the same aspect to navigate, I guess, the filters that we perceive life, right? And so this magnetite, when they were doing studies on it, Dr. Michael Persinger, he actually found that when he had two people in separate rooms and he was doing light therapy on one person, he found that the person that he was doing light therapy on had brain waves that were shifting from that light therapy. But then the other person that was in a completely separate room, not receiving anything, was picking up those same brain waves. And so what they actually found was, on a quantum level, we have connection to be able to pick up what's happening due to this magnetite that's in our brain. And so what's so profound about that is that if we shift ourselves, we can shift somebody else. Yeah. And that's like the whole aspect of like what science is catching up with, right? It's like pretty next level. And so crystals, they work on this subconscious level. They pick up through the magnetite in our brain, and they consciously help us to shift. But they also, when we work with them in a medicine, they help to balance out all of the density or the polarity that's happening to us. And so when we actually understand batteries, crystals are like little batteries, basically. They have so much potency, and when you work with them properly, they actually have the ability to shift your state or lift your state. And when we're in these higher states, if we're shifting ourselves, then we have the capacity to shift others that are around us as well.
Oh, I love that. That is such a great understanding of it all. It's beautiful. And I mean, that's just scratching the surface, right? Crystals they're still blowing my mind. They're a topic unto themselves that you could take years to just really hone in on, because each different crystal has its own properties and its own, I guess you would say, medicine or something, like its own different
100%.
type of charge.
Yeah.
So wow.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, Kass, thank you so much for all the info. I'm so grateful to have you and for your time. I know you're a busy mama and you've got lots going on, but can you tell the audience where they can get in touch with you if they want to learn more or jump into one of these freebies or one of your paid courses? Where's the best place?
Yeah, so the freebies is on my YouTube, just Cassandra Scardino, and that's got the I Am the Power Of, which is that freebie. And then if you are interested, I do that Smoky Quartz Celestial course. It's only $33, and you just get access on how to work with that. And that's really a game changer. But I do large courses. Like I teach containers where people get to work with me on a deep level to understand and come out in a profoundly different way. Like you shift completely who you are because of how you perceive the world differently, and understand it from working with these techniques and understanding how to use these tools. So I teach Point of Light and Aurora Ascension. So Point of Light's one of my esoteric based courses, and then Aurora Ascension's like my crystal based ascension program.
Amazing. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, thank you for just following your light and being your true self, because you are lighting people up along the way, whether you know it or not. And it's just so good to see, and that's what this whole podcast is about. People like yourself who are against all odds, even when you've got so many other things going on and you've got a busy family and everything, you are still doing what lights you up, and that is so beautiful to see. So thank you for that. Thank you for being you.
Thank you so much for having me and for being who you are, and giving people access to these amazing humans to shift reality. And, that's a blessing in itself. So blessings to you. Thank you so much.
Aww. Thank you, love. Well, I will talk to you soon. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Stay you, stay true. Mwah.